Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Peacemaker. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're not immediately picking up after the events of Suicide Squad, but I do appreciate the recap at the beginning. But we're picking up 5 months later. He's finally getting released from the hospital, and I love that him being the narcissistic person he is. He's like, can we do something with this x-ray so you can show off my smaller muscles? Because he's like, most people just kind of work on the bigger muscles. He's like, I pride myself on the fact that I work on small muscles, because he's like, right, if we just leave the x-ray as it is, it doesn't show all the work I've put in. She's just like, dude, go home. Which I was curious, what home was for him. It turns out he does have his own home. Because I was thinking at the time, I was like, oh, does he live with his dad? But it's like, no, he has his own place. But I love that he runs up to Jamil, was like, hey, psst. He's like, man, we smoked weed that one time, so can I trust you? He's like, no, I'm not a trustworthy person. He's like, do not trust me. He's like, that's why I didn't go to MIT. He's like, well, you could have gone to MIT. He's like, yeah, why are you here? He's like, that's exactly my fucking point. It's just like, all right, fine, I won't trust. Because he was also saying, can you keep it? He's like, yeah, he's like, I can't keep it secret. He's like, that's literally the opposite of everything you've been telling me so far. And he's like, right, I'm a superhero. It's like, you're not a superhero. It's like, my name's Peacemaker. It's like, there's no superhero name. Aquaman, now that's a superhero. It's like, man, fuck Aquaman. How dare you say that? You know what? I know a guy online who hit me up who says, yeah, Aquaman pays $50 to go, and he, has sex with the fish or something like that, which I'm like, that's so messed up. He's like, no, I refuse to believe it. He's like, why would insert, the, online handle of somebody being like, why would they lie to me? And just okay, that's so interesting that you are this gullible idiot. Yet you are, I guess you being the gullible idiot doesn't take away from you being this trained killer that you are. But I love that immediately he's like, right, I'm this and that. And he's like, oh my God, Peacemaker. He's like, yeah, you're that racist person. He's like, what? No, I'm not racist. He's like, well, yeah, but he's like, I kill criminals. He says, yeah, but the people you kill tend to be, he's like, well, fine. He's like, when I'm killing people for committing crimes, I'm not paying attention. I can't change their ethnicity. He's just like, no, it's just interesting. You don't pay as much. He's like, fine, going forward, I'm going to kill more white people. I'm going to pay more attention. Does that make you feel better? He's like, actually, yes. Essentially, he was kind of like, yeah, it does. But just like, yeah. All right, so do me a favor. Is anyone out here looking for me? He's like, no one cares. He's like, I can just leave? I was like, yeah, go. So he sneaks out. Seems like there's no issues, but word gets out, obviously they had someone staking out the place, because he thought, I'm supposed to be in jail, but he's like, oh, I can just leave. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah. Has to break into his own house. After he had to give the guy money from Carlton Maltese, but the guy was like, I'm not taking that. What's in the bag? Ended up having to give one of his helmets. I'm like, oh, I was like, do you have spares? Which we get an answer to that later on. Because I know based on the trailer, I know you have your helmet later. So either you got it back from that guy or you just have spares lying around. But we'll get to that. I love when he gets in his house and he's got thousands of voicemails and calls and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, and he's kind of I was like, oh, he said dad, and I was like, because that's why at first I thought that was his dad's place he was breaking into, and the voicemails were Vigilante being like, yo, dude, there's this shipping thing, let's go and blow those motherfuckers' head off, and it's like, don't say that on the freaking phone, you idiot. But the squad ends up showing up, which we get introduced to Adebayo ahead of time, which her significant other, her wife, Kia, I was like, if I'm not mistaken, comic book wise, she was in The Walking Dead, if I remember correctly. I think she was one of the saviors, former saviors. I think she died back in season 9. I think Oceanside killed her, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that's the same actress. I could be mistaken. I was like, there's something else. I was like, wasn't she also in, I still haven't gotten around to watching the second season of it, but I think she was in Another Life on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. Maybe she just looked, but I believe that's the same actress, but I could be mistaken. Regardless, I just thought that was interesting. She took this job, but she doesn't really want this job. So it's just right, she's just doing this. She's like, I'm just going to be doing paperwork, nothing too serious. And obviously we slowly get introduced to the rest of the team. Obviously John and Harcourt, we know from the Suicide Squad movie. They weren't in the original, were they? I don't think, I've only seen the original once, and that was a couple years ago. So I don't know. I definitely, I don't know if the Suicide Squad was their first movie or where they were actually in the previous Suicide Squad. Whatever the case may be, them as well as Myrn And obviously, I just love him being like, the moment they're all surrounding him, he's like, fuck. They're like, no, you served 4 years of your 30-year sentence. You thought we really let you go? He's like, yeah, but I did what I needed to do. Like, I was like, yeah, I even killed Rick Flag. And it's like, yeah, and that's supposed to be a good thing. It's like, well, Waller told me to do whatever it takes to make sure that information get out, and didn't get out. And it's like, yeah, it's funny how when it comes to you doing what you need to do, it just always happens to be tied to murder. So, so now he's going to be handling as a Project Butterfly, which, to be fair, he had every right to be like, wait, am I fighting Mothra now? Because you guys aren't too creative. I mean, literal Project Starfish was a literal giant starfish. So, like, am I dealing with a giant moth or, like, butterfly or something like that? And they're like, no, it's what they call people that need to die. So they're, like, butterflies. I'm like, oh, I don't know why. I like that motif being like, oh, that's what they're known as. I wonder why specifically butterflies, but maybe it's kind of like, these are people, we can't let them spread their wings, because if they did, it'd be an issue. Whatever the case may be. We never really got into why they're supposed to die, just that they're bad people, and it's like, right, we're going to use a bad guy to kill other bad guys because it's what you're proficient at. So he has to go first pick up Eagly from his dad's place, and Eagly turns out to be the eagle, because I love that he's like, you know what, you guys didn't do any research on me, Eagly's my sidekick. I was like, whoa, the eagle isn't just an eagle, it's your literal sidekick. I was like, is he because I think Peacemaker walks that line comic book wise as an anti-hero, but that's why I was like, maybe he might just be a straight up villain. I think he is a borderline anti-hero in the comic. I could be mistaken. But I was like, because the reason why I'm bringing it up, because I feel like I've seen things make jokes about, not jokes, but I feel like that is a thing that even villains have super pets of their own, right? Because obviously, you know, like your Cryptos, your Streakies. I mean, hell, they have a whole animated movie based around the super pets, obviously coming out. But I was just like, I was just wondering, like, so would Eagly fall into that category or not? I was like, oh, that's fascinating. But obviously, like, his argument with the neighbor, he's like, oh, aren't you that Peacemaker? I'm like, oh, so you are famous enough for people to know how much of a tool you are, how much of an asshole you are. So that's kind of bad. But also, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, it's not the recognition he wants, because it's like, oh, aren't you that supervillain? He's like, no, it's a misconception. I'm a superhero. I was like, nah, it don't seem like you're a superhero to me. So that whole argument. And man, oh man, did we find out how much of a garbage piece of shit his dad is, which I feel so bad, because like, it's Robert Patrick, dude. But man, this is dad terrible. Like, immediately is his dad like, it's like, oh, what kind of punk of a son do I have? The fact is that it's like, oh, like, tell me, like, how does someone like outshoot you, because he's supposed to be the best with every weapon? So it's like, how did someone outdo you? And it's like, right. I love that, trying to make things better. Like, he's trying to like, well, his dad didn't pay, cancel his service, so he's been paying, for that phone bill the entire time he's been locked up. He's like, I asked you to do it. He's like, oh, and it's my fault? He's like, no, I'm not saying it's your fault, but I just asked you to do it. He's like, yo, man up and take, essentially he wants him to take responsibility for his consequences. It's like, right, it's your fault that it all happened. Like, I'm not going to be responsible. Like, it's just kind of like disappointed. I'm like, man, now you kind of lean into why. And to me, I talked about this when I was talking about the Suicide Squad movie. I think it's such a fascinating thing that when Ratcatcher and Bloodsport are having their conversation about their complicated relationships with their dads and their circumstances, that he never joined in. Because hell, we even got to learn about Polka Dot Man's complications with his mother, but Chris Peacemaker never really opened up. So I thought that was interesting. That's also a thing too, like, he never really, like, I don't think his name, I think his name came up because we saw it in the preview when they were like recapping the Suicide Squad movie, but he was always just Peacemaker. No one ever really called him by his name. Like, I think he's the only one that, like, kind of specifically went by his code name. I don't think anyone else necessarily did. It's been I've seen the movie back when it originally came out, but it's been a while, so I think, like I said, I think that just all lends itself neatly to the character. But just knowing, like, yeah, he might be a garbage person, but it's because in his own twisted head, he does believe, like, no, what I do is I do good, because I love the guy, like the neighbor was like, no, Batman, now that's a hero. I love that. It's just like, yeah, like, oh, Aquaman's a hero. You're like, no, Batman's a hero. It's like, no, like, I'm a superhero. Like, don't bring up these other people, even though like they're the well-known go-to superheroes in this universe. But still, I love that. Yeah, like he does believe that he is in a right, that it's like, right, whatever I have to do is in service to the greater good, which I think is interesting considering how crappy his father is, because his dad's about like, well, at least you can kill the commies, the blacks. You're like, Jesus. And he drops some terminology in this episode. You're like, oh, okay, so we're supposed to just know like who you are. You're a very old racist person, and at least they kind of hint to, the joke is like, yeah, it seems like John Cena, well, I said John Cena, geez, that Peacemaker might be racist, but I don't think it seemed. And that's the sad thing, is like, hate can be learned. And it seemed like he got some of that from his dad, but it does seem like he steered on his path. Because despite everything, like, he had beef with Bloodsport, but it's not like, oh, you're blood. It's like, no, that was never an issue. His dad would probably have an issue, because not only did he find out, like, because, you know, they kind of like, hey, Dad, here's something funny, like, this way we can bond and laugh about, like, oh, Bloodsport being afraid of rats, and it's like, oh yeah, his dad locked him up, and it's like, oh, I thought he had all these acne bites, there were rat bites. I was like, that's so fucked up, you're laughing about it. You're dying laughing, tears in your face laughing about this, but it's like, right, and that's the sad thing, it's a defense mechanism for him. It's like, oh, I gotta find someone for me and my dad to laugh at, because it's like a bully usually will bully someone because they themselves are bullied or feel inadequate in some shape or form. His dad is his bully, so he kind of has to latch out at other people. He has to make other people seem smaller or feel smaller just so he doesn't have to feel small. I mean, maybe that could also be why he has the stature that he does. He put on the muscle, he wants to be strong, he wants to be the symbolism of like an American hero, an American soldier, because at the end of the day, it's all about making daddy proud. I want dad to be proud of me and not look at me. His dad even calls him a simp at one point in time, and you're like, Jesus. But it's like, yeah, the moment his dad found out, like, oh, please tell me the guy with the rat dude wasn't the one that shot you. And John was like, I can't talk. I said, I can't say John. Chris was like, no. My mission, I can't talk about it. He's like, Jesus, you're such a disappointment. If he found out that Bloodsport was black, it would make that even worse. So you're like, yikes. But getting insight into the helmets, I thought was interesting, because I don't think that came up in the movie, that the helmets had, maybe it was just a regular helmet, because he never used its capabilities. Once again, not unless I'm misremembering, but the fact is that each of the helmets have different abilities. And I'm like, oh, so there's significance to them. So what happened, like, well, I'm assuming the helmet the guy took was just a regular helmet, not unless it has some secret ability too, but I'm assuming it's just a regular helmet. I'm like, why'd you take a regular helmet? Why don't you always keep it? Which I'm like, I didn't, like, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I didn't know you were very, like, Batmaned up, tooled up to, like, the seams. Like, obviously you keep, like, weapons on you and stuff like that, but I didn't realize your helmet wasn't just, like, it's practical as well, because it also serves as a weapon in itself, so I thought that was such an interesting development, but showing, like, and his dad making a point, no, I didn't work on these while you were locked up. He's like, I know. He's like, these were from before. So I guess his dad would, like, when Peacemaker went off and became Chris went off and became Peacemaker, it's like, right, I made these for you, like, because we know his dad was a soldier, so I'm wondering, is any of this stuff that he had for himself as a soldier that he passed on to Chris, or the moment it's like, right, my son's going to be a hero, he's going to fight for all this, he's going to make this country great again, so I want you to have all of this. Because it seems like, it's also interesting to know that his dad's the one that made all this, but making the point of, I didn't work on this while you were locked up. That probably is true, but it's like, right, here's the helmets, and he ends up showing up when the meeting between everybody. I feel so bad for Adebayo, because she kind of gets the rough end of the stick being like the new girl, but I did love that conversation, like when they first got introduced and everything, and she's like, hey, like basically going around the table being like, hey, John, you seem like you're going to be easy to talk to, hardcore, we got to look out for each other, like, because we're both the only women, so you need anything, I got you. Peacemaker, you're not that good of a guy, but hey, like, you know, I'm gonna give you the benefit of doubt, like, I'm gonna enjoy working together and stuff like that. But and I love the whole thing of just like, right, sometimes like she gets nervous and she just keeps talking, so she's like, I'm gonna bite my tongue, I'm not gonna say anything else, I'm done talking. So that was so good. And And now in retrospect, she made this whole point where like John and Harcourt were like, oh, like she's fucking us because we like screwed her over with the Project Starfish with Task Force X. And then like Adebayo was like, no, why would she? No, she's not fucking me. Like she said that with such certainty. I was like, why would you think that? Now we find out at the end is like, oh, I was wondering like the way she was talking to Waller, and the fact is that it's just like, oh, such a casual conversation. I'm like, is she your? Oh, yep, she's your mom. I was like, interesting development. And her mom wants her to be a part of this work because I guess she's like, her mom is saying like, you have the mindset for this, but she's like, no. Once I'm done with this, I'm gonna find something else that I actually like, and I'm gonna do that for a living. Me and my wife, like me and Akia, we're gonna bounce away from this. So I think that's kind of interesting. I wonder what it is specifically about her that her mom is like, you're meant for this work. Is it the way her mind works, or like what is it about it? I don't know. I'm interested to find out. But I love when Peacemaker shows up in, you know, his outfit, and it's just like, I mean, I'd almost wonder if like that was supposed to, like, at first I was like, oh, you're doing this for like secret identity purposes. It's like, no, it defines him. Because it's also like, right, I don't want to be without this uniform. Like, he couldn't go long periods of time without putting it on. We saw him in casual wear for that tiny bit when he went to go see his dad. But I think it's also what he said is like, right, it's a new suit, so he's got to stretch it out by wearing it. But it's also like, do you have to wear the helmet too? It's like, why does it matter? You know? I love that when they were like, wait, he's showing up in the costume. She's fucking with us. And then like, Myrn was like, no, she's not. And they're like, is that an eagle in the back? It's like, she's fucking with us. But apparently John kind of hurt. Damn it, I keep doing that. Because the other character's John. When I'm thinking of Peacemaker, I want to just say John because I keep thinking John Cena. Because I didn't have this issue with the Suicide Squad movie. I don't know why I'm having that issue now. Peacemaker brings up that Myrn has like a questionable history. Like that when he killed people, it was people who kind of deserved it, who kind of also didn't, which I'm like, I find ironic considering you did the same thing. It's like, you respected Rick Flag and you don't think he deserved it, but you have a job and you'll kill anyone. You said it, women or children, if it means getting the job done, the whole dick line about a beach of dicks, from, you'd suck or eat all of them for America, for peace and all that. So, but yeah, like I said, I like that he even talks about it, that he is a bit of an old-fashioned person. Once again, kind of like, when you say old-fashioned like that, you're like, it has a negative connotation to it. Just like how because he's like, oh, so he calls the waitress sweet cheeks, and you're like, you can't just call her, why? She has sweet cheeks. It's like, no, that means butt. That's like calling someone sugar tits. It's like, no, like I would never, that's inappropriate. I mean, she doesn't even have sugar tits. Like sugar tits would be like, like her boobs are too big to be sugar tits. Like, I mean, Harcourt, you have sugar tits. John, you also have sugar tits. And also constantly calling him out for dyeing his beard. He's like, no, my beard's always been an unusual color. But we find out one of their targets is a senator. So it's like, oh, we're going to have some pretty high profile people. I'm wondering why these very specific targets, but maybe it's like a national security thing of like, don't worry about it, just get the job done. I do love that they do run into Vigilante. All those voicemails he left, and he actually sees Peacemaker, and he's like, oh yeah, that's my friend's brother. He's kind of got a mental illness, and he's out there dancing. He's like, ooh, Peacemaker's back, and he's shaking his butt off, and he's telling the guy, oh yeah, I found out my girlfriend is pregnant. It's like, you have a girlfriend? And wait, you have a girlfriend? It's like, yep, her name's Sharon Osbourne. Not the one you know. And it's like, oh, she's pregnant? And he's like, yep. Then why are you always asking me to hook you up with my cousin? He's like, I mean, we're not really, dating. He's like, but she's pregnant. He's like, yeah, I'm happy because we're having an abortion. And you're like, Jesus. He's just like, do you want to come? He's like, I'm not going to show up to your abortion. He's like, right. Obviously, that was also a thing kind of going into this, word had come out about like, this version of Vigilante isn't what you typically expect. Especially, Vigilante was different in the Arrowverse anyway, but also we got Adrian Chase. He just wasn't Vigilante in the Arrowverse, but obviously this is a very different Adrian Chase. I was like, interesting. I'm like, because they're leaning into him being more of a goofball. So whether or not, I mean, he could still be a goofball and still be extremely deadly. So It seems like the most serious person on the team so far seems to be Harcourt. Mern's kind of got that deadpan seriousness about him, but Harcourt's just kind of like, she's just like done with all this bullshit. She's just like, screw it, screw working with Peacemaker. But Adebayo kind of hits it off with him, but I think in grand scheme of things, that's on purpose. Like, I think she's meant to get close to him. Now, whether that's just because she does talk about it later on, it's like, right, like he might be sexist, potentially racist, but it's also like, right, she's like, there's something more to him. It just seems sad, and I think she's sensing like, right, his need to try and prove himself, to feel like he's more than what he is, that he feels like he's never enough, having to prove himself to his dad time and time again. But they're kind of hitting it off. I love the whole thing of like, oh my God, like, Eagle, like, is he friendly? It's like, oh yeah. And he bites at her. She's like, I thought you said he was friendly. I was like, oh, I thought you were talking about, was he friendly with me? It's like, of course I know he's friendly with you. He let you pet him. He's like, yeah. And he hugged me too. He's like, I call bullshit on it. He's like, well, believe if you want to or not, but still. But they're kind of hitting it off as friends. And I think that relationship, based on what James Gunn and the cast talked about at DC Fandom, that does seem like that's going to be a core part of the show, is their bond and stuff like that, because she's the only person on the team that's like, yeah, he's kind of a douchebag, but like, she doesn't have the same resentment towards him like everyone else does. There's also like that, what was it, Peacemaker's diary thing. She's like, you're like, yeah, like slip that in his room somewhere he won't find it. You're like, what's that all about? Because it seems like Adebayo, she's the only one that knows the big, it also kind of, it blows my mind too, because the actress who plays Adebayo, like, she reminds me of like my niece so much, like just like in her face, like they look so similar to me, so it kind of throws me off a little bit. Because I also know, like, I mean, I think one of the things she's best known for, I've never seen it, I've seen like only a few episodes. It's always a show I've been meaning to circle back to, but I never did. I know the thing I think she's best known for is Orange is the New Black. You're on Netflix, like the picture that scrolls for it usually will have like her amongst the like main people of the cast, like you'll see. So that's the thing I think she's probably best known for. But regardless, but she is in the know. It's about her having better understanding of the greater picture, which is interesting to have that timing, because The Legends of Tomorrow kind of has a similar thing of like, oh, a character just got like the bigger picture of what's kind of going on. So to have that in another DC property is just kind of interesting. It's just interesting timing happening in the same week. I'm like, oh, just drawing parallels between two different DC properties. But other than that, I think it's so interesting, and just like, that what they're setting up there. I'm curious what this bigger picture is. Considering everything later on, it's like, okay, so Project Butterfly might be more than just like, oh, these are regular targets. We're talking probably, well, they might be regular people that might be associated with some experiments. Now, what those experiments entail, whether that's kind of like some Star Labs experiment stuff. I mean, I wouldn't be so surprised if they kind of tied that in, considering the whole Polka Dot Man thing, but we'll see. But other than that, I love that him trying to like hit it off with Harcourt, but she was kind of like not having that, because she's like, once again, I don't like the rest of them. I definitely don't like you. She just wants to enjoy her drink. She's getting accosted by some dudes at some bar. She put them in their place, and he's just like, oh, that was so fucking hot. Like, you know, he's like, we don't even have to do anything. Like, I'm not asking for an emotional connection. It's just a physical one. He's like, I was locked up for 4 years. Been a long time since I've been with a woman. He's like, right, it doesn't even have to be anything special from here. And he kind of points to where his stomach is. He's like, actually, and he kind of goes up to his neck. He's like, up to here, because I want to touch your boobies. And she's just like, screw that. You go fuck yourself, and bounces. Cause he did like she's like, I clocked you when you did a U-turn. Once again, like, she was kind of on the comms and everything like that, so you didn't know she was the badass that she is, so that's kind of interesting. But for it to be a situation of like, she is very like, she is like the handler out in the field, cause he was like, oh, you're making it sound like I'm stalker. She's like, no, your actions are very stalkerish. I'm just describing what you did. So, but he sees a random lady at the bar. They pound it out, and it's like, woo, everything's great. And he's enjoying it. He's just feeling himself. And then, like, he goes and listens to some music. He's like, oh, this is great. You know, he's kind of like, fuck them. Like, I love that. What was it? I'm going to butcher the line, but he was like, oh yeah, thanks for letting me be in your pussy. Like, it made me, be able to feel good, like, let go of the stress. He's like, for the first time in a long time, I'm able to see hope. And he's dancing, enjoying himself. And then we see her go in the kitchen, like, I was like, oh, that sucks. Well, I was like, she's not going to turn out to be, it ain't going to be like an Austin Powers thing, but it turns out she's going to be a robot, is it? It's not going to be like an Elizabeth Hurley thing. It's like, no. It seems like not even a robot. It sounds like a monster the way she was growling, but she jacked him up. Not as bad, but like, there's a few slashes, a few stabs. I was like, wow. And she was tossing him around like nothing. It's like, oh. And I love that this is all happening while you're still in your tidy whities. Even you still haven't remedied that situation. Okay, I guess in his mind it's like, there's nothing more American than tidy whities, maybe. But whatever the case, well, I think it's also just probably for like humorous purposes. It's like, oh, this big hulking person in nothing but tidy whities. It's probably also supposed to fit the thing of like, right, you know, like Batman suits sometimes have that. Obviously, some Superman suits have the like it's the red tidy whities, whereas like Batman has a black tidy whities in certain suits, you know. So maybe it's supposed to be a little similar to that, but. Jumped out the window to escape, but she made sure to follow him. We see Eagly flying away, and she's running towards the car. And I love puts the helmet on, activates like a sonic field, wave field, and it not incinerates, but just like she turns into viscera. It's just like and it lands and just like the entire area is destroyed. But I do appreciate that Eagly brings him back like a possum or something and drops it off. He's like, thanks, buddy. And Eagly's like, there, but son. I'm like, that's a true partner in crime. Please, oh please don't let nothing happen to Eagly. Please let Eagly survive. Please, oh please, oh please. That would be heartbreaking. Because I'm like, I love that Eagle. That's a good guy Eagle. Well, bad guy, good bad guy Eagle. Whatever the case may be. I'm curious to really dive into this. Obviously, there's other episodes out, but I am watching these one at a time. But I'm so excited to see like where the hell the show takes us. Okay, because I saw maybe I saw the trailer. It might have been the teaser trailer. I've watched one a while back. The more recent ones, I've avoided all because I'm like, I don't want to know. Like, I got enough of what's going on here and there from some synopsis stuff I read a while back, as well as like what we got in the trailer. I'm like, that's all I need. I don't need any more. So. I think it was a trailer that might have dropped at DC Fandom. I don't remember if that was. I believe that might have been like the official like trailer or teaser at the time, whatever the case may be. Nevertheless, putting all my that tangent aside, I should also note I wasn't sure this show was going to have an opening credits, and it does. This is based on the first episode, so we'll see if it plays out throughout every episode. But it's a freaking dancing sequence, and just like everyone's kind of got stoic faces. So it's like the entire like main cast, the current squad. We get like Jamil, so maybe we're going to be seeing more of him. The next door neighbor. Even getting Robert Patrick to do it just seems so wild. We see some people with some badges, so I'm assuming those are going to be regular cops that are going to be mixed up in all of this and keeping an eye on Peacemaker and his team. So, nice, but I just thought that was kind of a nice little opening sequence. We also got a post-credit thing, but it was just a gag, because it's like, oh, this will give you scabies. He's like, why would I want that? He's like, yeah, because it'll toughen you up, because everyone needs scabies just to kind of make them tougher. And he's like, oh, okay. So, if I don't remember where I saw this, but I believe James Gunn has said publicly, we'll keep watching to make sure, but if I remember correctly, I think he said, like, every episode is going to have a post-credits. Now, whether they're all going to be gags like that, we'll have to wait and see. But I believe he said that somewhere. I just don't remember where. But like I'm down. I was already excited for this show. Like I was interested in it beforehand, but obviously upon seeing like John Cena's Peacemaker and Suicide Squad and knowing that it was like, oh, he's still alive at the end, so it's going to be like a sequel. But I'm sure there's probably going to be prequel elements of diving into his past here as well. But either way, I'm all for it. I was already excited for the show, and this just gets me even more excited to continue it. So obviously 2 more episodes left. So after I wrap up this recording, I'm immediately going to go watch episode 2. Record the review, then watch episode 3 and record the review. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.